Hello everybody, Mobius1 here, bringing you the Publish 9 patch notes. That's right, Publish 9 is live on the Basilisk server now, and surprisingly, as much content has been added in Publish 9, the patch notes are surprisingly short. I had to split my Publish 8 patch notes video into 2 parts that totaled like 55 minutes or something ridiculous. This probably won't be a really short video, but it's definitely not going to be an hour long. Before we get started, I do want to say that I'm not going to go over every single bullet point in these patch notes because then this video probably would be an hour long. I'm only going to go over what I feel are the most important patch notes, or the ones that apply to the majority of the players. If you haven't already looked over them yourself and you want to go over them in more detail than I do, I'm going to put the link to them in the description of the video so you can do that on your own. So let's get started. The first one that I think is really important is right here, the very first one under spawn/world. It says updated some newbie spawns to be non-aggressive. I feel like this is important because that means the low-level spawns that are around like NPC cities like Mos Eisley or Theed or whatever, with this change will no longer be aggressive to new players that are just starting. As many of you know, I had to make a video called Why Am I Dying that basically walked new players through the process of getting their first couple skills and how to take on their very first couple missions. So a change like this will actually help players that are unfamiliar with Galaxy's combat system to not die like on their first day, hopefully. Then we have easy and medium spawn zones around cities will now only spawn mobs from their respective spawn list instead of also spawning things from the world spawner. The only real reason this is important is because very recently we had a group of crate dragons spawn right outside Mos Eisley. And hopefully with this change, that shouldn't happen anymore. Honestly, something like that does actually add a little bit of flavor to the game. I'm not sure which way I prefer it. It is kind of fun to kind of be like the savior of Mos Eisley and show up with a bunch of people and take out these crate dragons that are, you know, threatening the city. But from a new player's perspective, this is a very, very positive change because now you don't have to worry about going out and killing, you know, womp rats or warts or whatever is right outside Mos Eisley, and all of a sudden 3 crate dragons spawn and start eating you for lunch. So overall, I think it's a positive change, even if we won't be saving the city from crates anymore. These last 2 points under spawn/world are kind of similar, so we'll just talk about them together. The Night Sister Stronghold Cave spawns are now more accurate to live, and Axkva Min now calls for assistance when engaged. Hopefully this means taking out Axkva Min, which is like the boss of the Night Sisters or whatever, is a little bit more difficult now because she can call for help from surrounding NPCs. I don't know if this means she spawns more NPCs or just the other Night Sisters that are still alive will rally to her. I'm not 100% sure on that, but either way, it will make things more interesting for sure. The third bullet point under creatures or NPCs or AI is fixed a creature area attack that wasn't properly an area attack. I'm highlighting this because even though I don't know exactly what creature this applies to, this means that creatures that were previously not doing area attacks will be now, which is just another reason to be extra careful with your vehicle when pulling up to a mission. While creatures in the wild will not specifically target swoops and speeder bikes and stuff like that, your vehicles are susceptible to area attacks. So if a previously not working area attack is now working, that means the chances of your vehicle being blown up by an area attack are higher now than they were previously. If anyone does know what creature or mob this is referring to, let me know in the comments and I'll put it in the video description. Right below that we have added proper AI pathfinding within the world and from the world into a building. I think this was like the nav mesh issue that was delaying Publish 9 from being finished in the first place. And Risen Angel has a little video here that you can see an example of exactly what this means. Now AI will no longer clip through solid objects in the world, they'll actually pathfind their way around them to get line of sight back on a target. I'm sure there might be a couple cases here and there where an enemy will still clip through a wall or a building or a rock or something, but at least we have the groundwork for this system in place now, and if something like that does pop up, it'll most likely be an easy fix. We have AI now uses height in its aggro distance calculation and will no longer sometimes aggro from too far away in hilly locations. Previously, the AI was just measuring the horizontal distance between itself and a player before choosing to aggro or not. Now, if the AI is, say, at the top of a hill and you're at the bottom, even if the horizontal distance is only like 10 meters, but the vertical distance is 30, the AI won't aggro you because you're still more than its 30-meter aggro range or whatever it actually is. Lastly, in the AI category, when a mob leashes for moving too far away from its home location, any dots on it will be removed. So if you've ever tried to kite a large NPC like a Night Sister or a Crate Dragon or a Rancor or something like that, you'll know that once you get a certain distance away from its home location or wherever it spawned, it will de-aggro from you and basically run as fast as it can back to where it was. Well, previously, you used to be able to put a damage over time effect on them, like poison or disease or something, so that when you catch back up to them, they've already taken a little bit of damage from that damage over time effect. Well, now when the AI says, hey, you're leading me too far away from my home, and they turn around and run from you, any damage over time effects you had on them are going to get cleansed. There's some point here about them adding something called like a Village Jedi and a Corellian Corvette or something, but we don't need to talk about those. There's a huge list here of different tasks that were added to the game, and basically these are just like random world quests, like the little AI guys that you talk to that have like the little eye over their head that give you some sort of like fetch quest or escort quest or some kind of, you know, generic mission. Some of these will give you unique loot that you can like put as a decoration in your house. Really, it's just some extra content to do. Targets for theme park or task quests will now only spawn once the player is close to their location. This is good so that if you have to do some sort of escort mission, the AI will no longer be in danger of dying before you actually get close enough to protect them. Or if you have to loot some target, nobody else is going to get there and kill that target and get loot rights before you. When speaking to a theme park or task quest giver while having another quest underway, the giver will now have the option to quit their current task. This is a big one because I don't think the game actually tells you that you can only have one active task at a time. So if you do talk to an NPC and get like one of those task missions that doesn't show up in your datapad, and you end up not completing it, you can now simply talk to another task NPC and abandon your previous task. Where before you actually had to talk to the same NPC that gave you the task in order to cancel it, or just wait for the server to reset, which would suck. Right below that it says escorts will now stop if a player gets too far away and will require the player to converse with them to continue. This was tested on one of my Jedi Village videos recently where we had to bring villagers back to the village, and when I made that video the villager never stopped on their way back, but that has since been changed. So now you do actually have to stick near the person you're escorting, otherwise they'll just stop following you and you have to go all the way back and talk to them again. We have two that are related again. Fix the Mark of Intellect quest to properly require the player to have spoken to the Hermit first, and the Mark of Altruism quest now properly requires completion of the Hermit's pre-quest. So I did do a series on the Hero of Tatooine quest line, and in that series I had mentioned that the Mark of Intellect, you actually didn't even need to speak to the Hermit in order to complete that quest. Well, now you do. And same thing for the Mark of Altruism, which I didn't know you could do that one without speaking to the Hermit, but it doesn't matter now anymore anyway. Deathwatch Bunker security waves will now despawn after 5 minutes if not killed. This is a big deal because a couple months ago, some of you might remember that the server was crashing due to unknown reasons. Well, a lot of people speculate that the server was crashing because a group of people were farming mobs in the Deathwatch Bunker, but not killing the additional mobs that spawned with the waves that they were triggering. And over time, those additional mobs would pile up and pile up and pile up, and eventually put so much stress on the server that it would deadlock and crash for everyone. Well, now that won't happen because after 5 minutes, if not killed, they'll despawn, so they won't pile up anymore. And lastly, in that category, DWB security waves now path through their rooms looking for intruders. This is going to make doing things in the DWB a little bit more interesting because you'll have mobs that are on patrol routes instead of just standing there, static spawn type. It's actually a good thing that I haven't done a DWB guide yet, because this obviously would change certain things. But yeah, that is on my to-do list. Under combat, we have mobs will now use secondary defenses. So I did do a video on defenses. If you haven't already watched it, it's probably worth watching. Secondary defenses are defenses like dodge, block, counterattack, or defense acuity. This pretty much just means that mobs are going to be a little bit more difficult to hit sometimes. They will actually dodge, block, and counterattack your moves now when before they weren't. There is a line here that says, fixed some instances where a player can get stuck in a feigned death state. Feigned death is a smuggler move, so I'm not sure why this isn't listed under the smuggler profession. Also, I've never had this problem, but I imagine anyone out there who ever has, this is probably a pretty important note to point out to you. Secondary targets of AoE or cone attacks will now properly give the attacker a TEF or temporary enemy flag where appropriate. So if you're an Imperial and you do some sort of AoE move on a neutral target and accidentally hit a rebel target in that area of effect, it will give you a temporary enemy flag for hitting that target even though it wasn't your intended target. Couple big changes to GCW. First, players must now be special forces in order to delegate faction points. So giving somebody else faction points now is going to require you to put yourself at risk for getting attacked in PvP. A PvP TEF now also blocks entry to player city civic structures. So now, when you engage someone in PvP, you're going to be locked out of any sort of city civic structure, whether that's like a cantina, a med center, cloning facility, anything like that, will no longer let you enter it for 5 minutes, I believe, is how long a TEF lasts. And this one's a pretty big one to me. I didn't even know this was actually how version 14.1 was, but apparently a player's faction insignia will now only show to opposite faction and neutral players if they are overt. So if you're neutral, you won't know what faction somebody else is unless they're overt, which is special forces or flagged for PvP. And similarly, if you're rebel, you won't know who's Imperial, or if you're Imperial, you won't know who's rebel until that person flags for PvP. I do not remember that being that way in live, but apparently they found evidence to support it, and otherwise the change wouldn't have happened. A lot of minor stuff was changed for a bunch of different professions. I think the biggest ones that I want to point out for bounty hunters is NPC bounty mission targets will now travel towards a starport and travel to a different planet when they get there. So now when you get a bounty mission, your target will be moving across the planet on foot, and once that target reaches a starport, they'll actually switch planets and you'll need to retrack them on the new planet. For droid engineer, droids made in factories should no longer lose their modules after removal from the crate. That's a big one because a lot of droids in the last publish weren't behaving properly because they were removed from a factory crate, and now they will. And droids with no power can no longer function as crafting stations, so people like me who just use their droids to like buff people or to use it to get a little bit of an experimentation boost in crafting, we will actually have to worry about recharging our droids because once they're out of power, they will no longer function. Entertainer, you have added group XP bonus, added XP bonuses for audience response, which I'm not sure exactly what that means, and fixed flourish XP to diminish over time when no new flourishes are performed. I haven't really done a whole lot of videos on Entertainer, but I know what a huge part of the community that makes up, so hopefully we'll get maybe somebody who's more experienced with Entertainer in here to start talking about some stuff for you guys. And I'll see if I can find out exactly what kind of XP bonuses this is talking about. For Medic, Doctor, and Combat Medic, healing and buffing now properly take into account the target's battle fatigue. So if your target has over 250 battle fatigue, any sort of healing or buffing, the effect will actually be reduced. So anyone who's got buff bots set up in med centers or whatever, you might want to change your macros to remind people to go get their battle fatigue healed before they start getting buffed. For Smuggler, slicing a weapon with a power-up on it will now destroy the power-up, so beware that. Added the Eyes of Mesra to loot. The Eyes of Mesra is actually like a little interactive magic 8-ball. Kind of like how you can use, you know, the dice in-game where to roll numbers. I'm not exactly sure if the Eyes of Mesra puts the answer in spatial chat or not for everyone to see, but it's kind of like you ask it a question and it'll kick back an answer like yes, maybe, no, ask again later. It's It's just something fun to play with. Exceptional and legendary items can now drop from any level enemy. So even those Jawas walking around in Mos Eisley, I guess, can drop legendary weapons. Though I'm sure the stats of the weapon or the skill mods on it will scale based on the level of the enemy that drops them. So I don't think we'll be getting like endgame PvP weapons off of low-level mobs, but it's interesting that now you can get legendary stuff off of just about anybody. A couple different weapons had their armor piercing fixed. You have the two-handed axe and the Night Sister energy lance. Bunch of different things now have their name turned yellow, so clothing and armor with attachments are yellow named. Bioengineer enhanced clothing will have yellow named, and weapons with damage over time and looted items with skill mods will have yellow names. This is a big one. Pets and vehicles can no longer be stored while their owner is in combat or dead. So I myself am very, very guilty of driving right up to like a mission, getting too close to it where the enemies like aggro on you, and then hopping off your swoop or storing your swoop so that it doesn't get destroyed and fighting the mission off that way. Can't do that anymore. If you aggro those guys, you can't store your vehicle now, so you better make sure you hop off of it and run away from it before it gets destroyed in an AoE. And down in the bottom we have added species XP bonuses. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but I do plan on looking into it and adding what it is into the video description, so check that out. And lastly, the two most important things to come in this publish: the Race Droid player event perk and the Scavenger Droid player event perk. I've done multiple videos on the event coordinator items in the past with the different games and stuff like the jukeboxes and the lotto droid. These are two more things for us to play with. The race droid actually lets you like place a race droid and then go and set waypoints to create your own custom race. And the scavenger droid, if my memory serves me, lets you actually put items into the droid that then, when activated, require other players to like put that same item into the droid or something. It's like a scavenger hunt. I don't know. I'm definitely going to do a video on these at some point because I love all the event coordinator stuff. It's just additional player-made content to keep things fresh, and those are definitely the highlights of Publish 9. So that's it for the Publish 9 patch notes. I hope you guys are excited as I am for this. It is slightly unfortunate that we didn't have the wipe that we almost had when the hard drives failed. But there wasn't really supposed to be a wipe this early anyway, so you can't really be that upset. Remember to check the video description for any updated information or corrections to anything that I might have said incorrectly. And stay tuned for more videos in the future. Mobius1 here. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Alright, so I'm being told that these two first points under events, dungeons, theme parks, or quests are kind of more important than I might have thought they were. So let's go over them a little bit more. Added the Village Jedi progression system. This includes everything from getting glowy through to the Village outro, the Padawan trials, the Jedi professions, visibility system, player bounty hunting, and the Night trials. The Force ranking system is disabled for now as it is still under development. It's here. Basilisk has Jedi. There's not much else to say. Whether you love them or hate them, and I know there are a lot of you that hate them, but they were always coming, and now they're here. So it's going to be a while before we see any. The absolute quickest anybody can complete the village from now is like 15 weeks and a day, because it's 3 weeks times 5 phases plus 1 day for the last phase. So it's going to be a while, but you can sure bet those bounty hunters are going to be refreshing those terminals day after day, waiting. And in addition to that, we have the Corellian Corvette dungeon and associated quests and loot, which means the AV-21. I was really hoping to have more Jedi videos done before Publish 9 came out, but unfortunately real life just took away much more time than I was expecting. So I'm going to do my best to keep doing village walkthroughs. Corellian Corvette missions have been added to my video to-do list. Yeah, I can't really think of much else to talk about right now. So that's it again. Mobius1 here. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you again later.